Hello, it's Garnet again, and I've been asked to speak about the brain networks found in the Neurolite. I think you're all aware, perhaps for those of you that are new, you're becoming aware, that the Neurolite has three interrelated and integrated aspects. There's the brain skills, which is a big section. Sometimes I call it the candy store. And that's related in a complex adaptive system to self-regulation, self-organization. That's to say, new learning, new adaptation. Then there's the brain food, which is the nasal light, and that relates to making sure that the brain has sufficient supplemental energy to do all the things that it wants to do. The third thing is the brain gym, and the brain gym is basically brain exercise. And it focuses on making sure that the multiple connections and communications that are all necessary for learning are at a good, strong, and stable level. So brain skills, brain food, and brain gym. When we talk about the brain networks, we talk about the brain gym. So, refer to other videos so you have a concept as to why the brain gym is there. I won't go into depth there. In the brain gym, you're going to find two kind of sections. One is all about the individual exercises, the trainings, and connected to that is the assessment process. We'll talk about that later. So one aspect of the brain gym are the brain exercises per se, coordination, flexibility, endurance, and strength. Then the other, that's the brain networks. And the brain networks are extraordinarily important. To the best of my knowledge, no other instrument or device or tool has taken advantage of the 2016, meaning this is 2017 right now. Just last year, 2016, there was an extraordinary research project that identified the fundamental frequency sets and their relative relationships and importance in the 7 major brain networks. Okay, what's a brain network? And why is it important to us? You know, we, as humans, we've been discovering things about the brain step by step. There is more to be discovered than what we know now. I mean, who knows what the percentage is? Maybe we know 10, 20% of it. Anyway, you know that the brain has different parts and pieces, different locations, and that was the first big advancement in the last century, is this whole thing called localization. The idea that certain parts of the brain have certain distinct tasks or responsibilities. So you could talk about the frontal lobe, you could talk about the visual cortex at the back, the occipital lobe, the parietal lobe, and all these kinds of things. And that is still valid. There is a tremendous amount of research that has gone into that, and interestingly, much of it has to do with the work of neurosurgeons while they attend to people with different kinds of brain diseases or brain malfunctions or traumatic injuries, areas of the brain interrupted or destroyed by stroke or by traumatic head injuries, bullet wounds, all these kinds of things. There's a huge and critically important body of information that is built there over time and is still building. And now we have all of these devices that are able to actually watch the brain as it functions, functional MRIs and different magnetic processes and ways of looking at the oxygen uptakes, the BOLD studies, and on and on. So what's come out of this is a very provocative appreciation that the different parts, the different localizations, the different pieces of the brain not only do what they do, but in certain demands and certain functions, they will join together in a kind of a teamwork. And that during that task, they'll act as a team, and then after the task, they will disassemble and go back to their private jobs again. So This is pretty amazing stuff. The understanding of it is relatively new, and what we'll find is that it's going to keep on growing. So networks are special teams made up of different parts. They get together, do their work, and then go back again to their individual tasks. That's kind of layman's terms, and it's reasonably accurate, although you can get very technical about it, much beyond my abilities, and frankly, everybody's discovering every day. So in the Neurolite, understanding that the brain gym is meant to give brain exercise to make sure that the brain is capable of basic functions like coordination, flexibility, endurance, and strength at different levels, kind of a beginner's foundation, intermediate, and advanced. Along with that is the ability that you have to just select one of the 7 of the brain networks and reinforce that by stimulating the brain with the language of the networks, the particular collection of frequencies, and not just what frequencies, but the ratio of their involvement in the network. Networks. What I'll be doing is probably a few parts to this, and I'll break them down more clearly, but I want you to appreciate that these networks have evolved to be able to enable the brain to almost instantly move from one task into another, to move from what is sometimes a near chaos, a cacophony of unknown numbers of signals, and jump into a temporary order for a certain process. So what you could imagine is that these networks act as bridges from near chaos into temporary order again. And chaos is not a bad thing. Chaos is when everything loosens up so that you can have new perspectives. It's a kind of a state with a very low bias. It has a very low prejudice in terms of what it's going to do. So, you know, I would love to peek into neuroscience 50 years from now, because where we've come in 50 years is staggering. Where we can go is going to be amazing. So, first of all, understand that the brain networks are found in the brain gym because using them helps to reinforce or fortify these crucial network activities. It's a little bit, I don't know, the analogy is weak, but like there are all these different basketball teams, these sport teams, and they each do what they do, and then you can pick certain players from each team to come together for kind of like an all-star team or an Olympic team. And they do that, and then they go back to their individual activities after that. That's kind of the way it works with the networks. So when you consider doing brain exercise, because you may recall there are 3 basic ways of using the Neurolite: brain exercise, help right now, and brain shaping. In brain exercise, we have the brain gym. And the brain gym has got those 2 elements that interrelate. The isolated exercises, coordination, flexibility, endurance, and strength, and the other are the brain networks, where you get to make sure that these teams are well coached, that these teams are ready, willing, and able to jump into action whenever they're needed. And they're needed a lot and all the time. So this is a general introduction, and what I'll do now is pause and then return with more of a breakdown, a kind of an overview of each of the networks and how they might be used. Thanks.